Szymon Amiel was a Polish Jew living in the Białystok ghetto. He claimed that some German authorities selected him in mid-May 1944 to participate in the exhumation of mass graves and the cremation of the bodies contained in it. Amiel testified about this in late 1944, together with another member of this unit, Salman Edelman. Their tale was published in 1944 propaganda piece, The Black Book, authored by the notorious propagandists Ilya Ehrenberg and Vasily Grossman. In October and November 1945, Amiel made 2 more depositions in front of a Polish judge. There are several revealing differences between his testimonies, as well as many peculiar claims. For instance, in 1944, he claimed to have been driven to a worksite in a murderous gas van. He then asserted to stacking bodies on a woodpile 2 meters high, claiming the pyre reached 3 meters in height. However, in 1945, he would state very different claims. For example, he clarified that he was driven in an uncovered truck. Not a gas van, then. He next claimed that the bodies were stacked 5 meters high without wood. In his 1945 version, the bodies are sprinkled with bitumen and gasoline, then set alight to destroy them. These accelerants give off too little heat to destroy human bodies in the density described. At most, the bodies would have been charred, but not turned to ash, as claimed by eyewitnesses. Finally, he claimed the pyre was larger in 1945 than in 1944. In 1944, the pyre was 3 meters high, but now in 1945, the pyre was an impressive 6 meters by 7 meters by 5 meters. Such a pyre would have required a crane to construct. As stated in previous lectures, one human body requires at least 250 kilograms of wood to be effectively cremated out in the open. This also assumes ideal weather conditions. The density of green wood is roughly 0.9 meters cubed, and an ideal stacking density on a pyre is 1.4. At this density, the airflow and flames can travel through the pyre more effectively. This means that the wood required to burn 1,000 bodies had a volume of some 390 cubic meters. However, Amiel's pyres only had a volume of 210 cubic meters. The wood alone would have stacked up to more than 9 meters in height. Amiel's eyewitness accounts contain other incredulous claims. In one instance, he and Edelman claimed that corpses were extracted from mass graves by tossing 1 or 2 hooks tied to ropes into the uncovered pit. When one hook caught a corpse, it was pulled out, as if this was a child's angling game. The same absurd corpse fishing game was described by Yuri Farber in a testimony also published in the Black Book of Soviet Jewry. This is a case of convergence of evidence on a lie, probably because the witnesses contributing to this book had a chance to learn from one another. Amiel seriously claimed that a Polish family that was shot and thrown onto a burning pyre was consumed by the flames within 10 minutes, and that he could gauge the age of corpses by the lengths of their beard. Amiel's inmate slave labour unit supposedly contained 43 in 1944 or 40 persons in 1945. This team allegedly exhumed and cremated bodies at various locations in the area. In the table on screen, the data in the left 2 columns is given by Amiel, while the data in the right 2 columns is calculated. As can be seen, the time needed just to cut the wood, which would have been required to cremate the bodies of Jewish victims, would have occupied the entire team in every single claimed case at least 4 times longer than they supposedly spent for all the rest of the work. This work allegedly included uncovering mass graves, angling out bodies, building pyres, burning them down, sifting through the ashes, grinding down bones, and filling up the mass graves. If we look at the total claimed in the last table row, we see that Amiel's team would have taken more than a year just to cut the wood needed to cremate all the bodies he claims they cremated. This would have required the felling of all trees growing in a 50-year-old spruce forest, covering up to 24 hectares of land, or some 53 American football fields. To get this work done within the 57 days, claimed would have required a workforce of some 298 dedicated lumberjacks just to cut the wood. This testimony relates to one of many events claimed to have been part of the alleged German cleanup operation, which the Orthodoxy calls Action 1005. The data on screen demonstrates conclusively that Amiel's entire scenario is completely detached from reality. It cannot be based on experience but on mere imagination and delusion. In light of this information, the claims from the orthodoxy become more interesting. Was it possible to burn bodies in the manner that Syzmon Amiel describes? At least, according to the skeptics, the incinerating of hundreds of thousands of bodies would have been impossible under the conditions described by Amiel. The executing of skilled labour after every job makes absolutely no sense, and would have made the process of woodcutting more difficult. When one looks into the Holocaust long enough, they are eventually exposed to a number of fantastical stories. For instance, survivors have claimed von Braun executed an average of 5 people a day and ordered the corpses hung from the ceiling like macabre Christmas ornaments. The executing of skilled labour for rockets doesn't make sense any more than the executing of skilled lumberjacks. Regardless, the dimensions of the wood pyres and the need for more advanced machinery to build the pyres would have been unlikely under wartime conditions. The kind of wood that would have been readily available in a short period of time could only be green firewood. Such wood contains water and would have taken longer to burn than cured firewood. Firewood takes at least 2 years to cure and for the moisture content to evaporate, at least according to modern standards. There are numerous kinds of firewood that differ in weight because of their own unique characteristics. Indeed, it is likely that more wood would have been required than even the conservative estimates state. Consequently, huge swathes of forests needed to be levelled to feed this conspiracy, yet this didn't happen. It is difficult for me to believe the Jewish narrative in light of these details, but you be the judge. Interestingly, as I was doing research for this lecture, I found that there are some who claim that a body in the open air can be completely consumed by a fire produced from 1 to 2 pounds of wood. However, when one looks closer at this claim, one will find information about cremation processes that use modern equipment and a couple of pounds of wood in the form of a casket. They claim that a body can turn to ash in 2 to 3 hours depending on the condition of the body, e.g. obese, emaciated, etc. When I queried the AI assistant for information to use in this video, it claimed that the need for about 500 pounds of wood for an open-air cremation is a complete exaggeration. Whilst I can't prove or disprove this claim completely, in my research I found a company that does open-air incinerations. Importantly, they claim they can cremate a body with half a cord of wood. This information would align with the need for 250 kilograms of wood for every body, as is asserted by the revisionists. Keep in mind that this company has a specially built container that built for the purpose of open-air incineration. The Germans would not have the same luxury. With the wartime pressure on German supply lines, strategic materials would likely have been saved for weapons and armour than in the construction of elaborate funeral pyres. Otherwise, the German defence would and should have crumbled long before 1943.